Which players made a case to stick on the Vikings' final 53-man roster after their preseason game? The Twins are back in the playoff hunt after a dramatic weekend sweep, and why Kirk Cousins' passing game could be nostalgic for a certain era of Vikings fans. It's all coming up next on Superior Sports Talk.
KARE 11 sports anchor Reggie Wilson covers the Twin City sports scene non-stop. Luke Inman is ready to put him on the hot seat.
That's what you're going to do to me?
Instant analysis.
Yanked. Out you go.
Post-game breakdowns and red-hot takes.
The Timberwolves need a stitch.
Reggie and Luke give you a daily dose of Minnesota sports with Superior Sports Talk. Part of Locked On Sports Minnesota. And it starts now.
Back in the lab, Reggie and Luke back at it. Another episode, Superior Sports Talk, presented by Locked On Sports Minnesota, your daily 30-minute breakdown of everything Minnesota sports. That's Reggie Wilson on Twitter, at Reggie Wilson TV, and on KARE 11. Monday, Reg, we got an absolutely jam-packed lineup to get in today after a wild and crazy weekend in Minnesota sports.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about it. Just a crazy weekend, some unexpected twists, turns, all that good stuff. Let's get into it.
Yeah, roller coaster of action. Hey, remember first, follow along on the Locked On Minnesota YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button there, and on Twitter, give us a follow at Locked On MIN. Remember, we're a podcast too, free and available on all platforms, Spotify, Apple, you name it, we got it. And a plethora of choices over there. Ron Johnson Show, The Football Party, and more. Your one-stop shop with endless Vikings talk with local experts. Do us a favor. Hit the subscribe button there and drop us a 5-star review. All right. To football we go. 10 days until week 1 of the NFL season kicks off. That means 13 days until the Vikings home opener taking on the Green and Gold Packers. The Vikes traveled to Denver Saturday evening, playing their final preseason game against the Broncos. Plenty of meat and potatoes to dive into here, Reg. Let's start with your winners. Now, obviously, we're in that stretch here where cut days is just hours away. And this was the last real chance for those bubble guys to make their case as to why they should stick around on this final 53-man roster or practice squad. So which 2 or 3 players made the biggest impact and, made things tough on coaches from what you saw Saturday night?
Well, T.Y. McGill had the ankle injury. Of course, he's probably like the easiest person to say. But funny enough, I got a few guys. How about Nick Mullins? Did not even play in the preseason finale. And it's just like, man, his spot just seems set on this team. Like, that is a testament.
Less
to
is
where
more
they
for
are.
Nick Mullins.
Yeah. Also, Ty Chandler. I mean, he wasn't in jeopardy of getting cut or anything, but the dude just played well the dude just balled out this preseason. So shout out to him for coming in and just hitting the ground running. What's interesting is the Vikings, that starting offensive line front seemed to have Jesse Davis just penciled in there from like the start of like off-season camp and all that stuff. And now all of a sudden he might be in jeopardy of not even making the roster because of Ed Ingram's like ascent. Like, that's kind of crazy to think about. With the wide receivers, I think Tristan Jackson has made a way for himself, especially with BC Johnson having torn the other ACL now. So I see a possibility of Tristan, I should say, making a way on this roster as maybe like the wide receiver number 5, 6, something like that. You can never have too many receivers, I guess. Those are pretty much the guys that I see being able to just kind of make the roster and keep it moving as the season gets started here.
Yeah, first and foremost, absolutely brutal news with BC Johnson tearing his other ACL. Now, I've been a big advocate for him all offseason, reminding people he was the team's wide receiver 3 before the emergence of Osborne when he went down with that first ACL 2 years ago. And he's looked sharp all camp, all preseason. KJ needs a breather in those joint practices in San Francisco. Boom, who's the next guy up? It's BC Johnson. And I thought he really separated himself from the pack of wide receivers that we've kind of grouped together for one of those final roster spots. But now, hey, It's the NFL, sad as it is, next man up mentality. Glad you mentioned a guy like Tristan Jackson. Even with that one brutal drop he had wide open over the middle, I still thought he looked really sharp, really good, great at separating and getting open. Myron Mitchell's still a possibility, though. They've been kind of 1A and 1B. And then, of course, you got the rookie, Jalen Nailor from Michigan State. So interesting to see how all that plays out. I'm with you. I'm giving the edge to Tristan Jackson there of those three. And maybe you try to slide Nailor in on the practice squad for a year, let him get a year under his belt. Other players that stood out to me, Amir Smith-Marset, another receiver. Have yourself a game, young man. I mean, his best game of the preseason without a doubt. And BC goes down. To see him not even flinch, jump into that wide receiver 4 spot, it just feels right after watching this preseason of him and after that game specifically Saturday night. He also had a much better day returning punts too and provides a little spark back there heading into the season on special teams too. So big night for him. And I got to mention him too. You already threw his name out, but rookie running back Ty Chandler. Just been pounding the table every chance I get. This is a guy who isn't as buried on the depth chart as you might think. I think you're going to see a heavy rotation after Cook behind Dalvin. Kwesi and KOC seeked him out. They handpicked him in their first draft together, and they wanted this guy on their team for a reason. You can't say that for someone like Alexander Madison. So point is, after another just rock-solid performance from Ty Chandler, he looks fresh, explosive out there. 5 carries, 44 yards, averaged over 8 yards per carry in his second game in the preseason. I just think he's on the field more than people assume he'll be, even in his rookie year, buried on that depth chart. So all in all, we're talking largely backups and bubble guys that Saturday night, but you had really 2 nice outings by 2 offensive players that I just think will definitely be part of the game plan and get a little bit of piece of the pie, a little bit of action throughout this 2022 season. Remember, Tuesday, tomorrow, 3 p.m., welcome to the Wild Wild West Showdown. Every single team must be down to a 53-man roster as it stands today. Vikings hovering around 80 players, which means, obviously, do your math, carry the 27 players have to walk into that coach's office and have that tough, awkward little sit down nobody likes. Remember, Locked On Sports Minnesota gives you endless Vikings talk with local experts and now offers you a new podcast all about the Vikes. The Minnesota Football Party brings together a panel of podcasters and writers with big opinions on the purple. Myself, Arif Hassan of The Athletic, Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings, and of course, Sam Ekstrom of The Ron Johnson Show. We give you an hour of Vikings talk every Monday and Thursday. Find the show wherever you get your podcasts by subscribing to Locked On Sports Minnesota or watch the show anytime, any day for free on YouTube. Coming up, we're talking which Twins player was the hero during their weekend sweep of the Giants. But first, have you checked the latest Vikings odds? Vikings week 1 line versus the Packers sits at +2 as we speak. Or maybe you're interested in some future bets like Lewis Cine for Rookie of the Year or Vikings to win the NFC North sitting at 2-1 right now. Well, you can check it all out and more with BetOnline. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Stats, news, and info. You want it, they got it. BetOnline makes betting easy and is your #1 source for all your betting needs. Go to BetOnline.net today to learn more. That's BetOnline.net. It's where the game starts. All right, to baseball we go. Well. Just when you were ready to count them out and leave them for dead, Reg, look at this. The Twins, with a miraculous come-from-behind win Saturday night against the Giants, they go on to sweep them and start a new streak, 3 wins in a row after losing 6 straight. They outscore the G-Men 20-5 in the series, and more importantly, now sit just 2 games back from Cleveland and separate themselves from Chicago in the meantime as well. Reg, what a wild weekend for the Twins. I want your best 3-minute recap, but start first with the hero of the sweep. Which player was MVP during a stretch of absolutely must-win games for the Twins?
All right, Luke, I'm going to get off the beaten path a little bit here. A little unorthodox here.
Here we go.
The hero of the series this weekend is that wooden thing they like to call a bat. That's the hero of the series. Look, that 6-game losing streak, they just look dead in the water. You know, especially against the Astros, those ninth innings were the only times that they showed any kind of life in those series. Ended up getting swept in the season by the Astros. And now you're just like, dang, man, like they couldn't have looked any more cooked. Like, what does Shaq say? Barbecue chicken. Like, they were barbecue chicken after that series against the Astros. And then all of a sudden, I don't know if Louisville Slugger just ended up making like a special edition or something like that. But then they come out and it's 9-0. Like, what is that? How does that even happen? Where does that team come from after 6 straight losses? They're able to come out and beat a team 9-0. 9-0, Luke. 9 runs where they barely could score 2 or 3 without getting out of a game the last like week or so. And they score 9 runs. 9 runs. I don't know why I keep saying it. But
9 times. 9 runs,
9 times.
Reg. What are we doing?
Cross the plate 9 times. And then they come out, and on Saturday, I'm like, oh, okay, here we go. You know, it's 3. You know, they come out and they get,
right.
You know, the bats are maybe not there. And then all of a sudden, it's like, no, don't count us out. We're not dead. You know, I put the GIF on Saturday, the Undertaker, when he like sits up out of nowhere. You think the Undertaker's done, and all of a sudden he just sits up and he looks at you with those like, you know, snake eyes, and you're just like, oh my God, it's doomsday. He's coming to get me. You know, he's about to bury me. And that's what they did. They came from behind and beat the Giants. And then yesterday, you know, I'm like, oh man, well, look, they got 2 out of 3. It's all good. And then all of a sudden, it's just like, boom, we're gonna score 8 of them. Like, and it was funny because I tweeted, I was like, hey, like, save some of these runs, guys. Like, you're gonna need them. Trust me, you're gonna need them. But honestly, kudos to the Twins, okay, for toying with fans' emotions, because they look dead in the water, and then all of a sudden they sweep the Giants, and they're now only just 2 games back of first place in the division. And Chicago is just a hot mess right now. We're not even gonna go there with them. So it's them and Cleveland, I feel like, to lose as far as this division goes. And now all of a sudden 2 games back. And it's just like, okay, you're going against this series with the Red Sox. Red Sox are last place in the division in the AL East. But they are only 4 games. I'm looking at it. 4 games under 500. So, like, this team is no slouch. And they're hoping to try to strike some fire as well and maybe, you know, catapult themselves up. Like, they've been leapt by Baltimore in Toronto. Like, they're last place in their division. So, like, look, they've lost 3 of their last 5 games. And now the Twins are, quote unquote, surging with their 3 straight wins. So, like, if they can kind of get this team and beat, like, the Red Sox lost 12-4 to Tampa last night, but they won the first 2 games of that series. So, like, this team is not going to be a slouch, but if they can kind of see if they can carry some of that momentum from this weekend series into this series with Boston, they just may have a fighting chance to creep back up to the top of this division. But they are doing this with our emotions. They are doing this because they look all competitive, and then, you know, you never know. They could come out and get swept by Boston, or they can come out and lose 2 of 3 to Boston, and now all of a sudden you're just like, dang, man, you know, it's like fool's gold. And so I don't really know what to think about this team. But what I do know is this is probably one of the most resilient bunch of you-know-whats that we've seen, because, like, anytime you lose 6 straight and you're just flailing in the division, and all of a sudden you win 3 out of nowhere. Like, if you would have said, like, yeah, a team lose 6 straight and then all of a sudden they win 3 straight, I think you would probably, like, think that you would test that person for drugs for saying that. Like, you wouldn't bet on that. Like you wouldn't go out there and say, "Oh yeah. I think it's one of those like Charles Barkley. I guarantee it." Like one of those things where you're just like, "Oh, he is out of his mind if he thinks this is gonna happen." And then it happened, and you're just like, "Where did this come from?"
Here's the thing. You'll love the blowout, right? 9-0. You'll take that every day, of course. 10 out of 10. Those are fun. Easy. Don't got to throw it to Ron or Lopez. Keep it simple. It's safe. It's sexy, right? But the catalyst to this whole thing, if they're going to go on a playoff surge, was Saturday night. Dead in the water. Giants even score an insurance run. Go up 2-0 in the ninth. They won a game that they shouldn't have won. And how many times have the Twins lost games that they should have won? So you're expecting that to balance out a little bit, but you still got to go out and do it. To have that miraculous comeback the way they did with 2 outs, by the way, down 2-0, 2 outs, and rally back, that's what gives you that little bit of hope that, like, we can do it. We can beat anybody at any time. We have the talent. We got the players. And, I mean, shout out to Carlos Correa, man. Chef's kiss. Absolutely in fuego. Buxton out. You're paying this guy $35 million to be the guy. And finally, just flips on that switch, man. How much heat has he taken from the media, people like us, fans, you name it, and finally flips on that switch and puts the team on his back. 7 hits in his last 9 at-bats with the walk just for good measure, 4 RBIs. But more importantly, just the leader this team needed at the top of the order to get things cooking, and finally seems like they can start to lean on him when adversity strikes. That game Saturday, though, specifically, got to mention it again. Down 2 rip in the ninth. They rally all the way back with 2 outs. Correa with the clutch hit and RBI. Jake Cave with the game-tying RBI, which, by the way, if we're going to color outside the lines a little bit and I'm going to pick a co-MVP, I'm going with Jake Cave. Comes in, goes 2 for 2 as a pinch hit in Saturday's comeback. 2 for 4 yesterday with 4 RBIs, 1 home run and a double. Great to see some other names stepping up with Buxton out. Even Max Kepler got in on the action. 4 for 6 this weekend. You love to see it. And we haven't even mentioned the pitching yet, Reg. Sonny Gray, Joe Ryan, Aaron Sanchez, your 3 starters. Gray and Ryan, great outings. When Sanchez got in trouble and he was yanked in the 4th, these relievers and closers, nearly flawless. I mean, that is exactly what you expected when you made all those trade deadline deals for Lopez and Fulmer. Quick thoughts as we wrap up on the pitching this weekend and just moving forward in these last, 30 games?
That's exactly what you want to see. They made those moves at the deadline to bolster that unit. And this is exactly what you want to see. The guys that you have confidence in, the guys that you have faith in, really coming up big when the moment arises. It's the perfect storm. And we always said, like, look, the pitching was what was going to be their question mark. If they can get the pitching, you expect the bats to be able to keep them or put them in every game that they play. But we haven't seen that type of complementary baseball as we've seen this past weekend. The question is it sustainable? And you like to think that it is. The talent is there. There's nothing to explain these lulls that they have. Like, they lose these 6 straight games. I don't know if it's confidence. I don't know if it's just fatigue. Like, I really don't know. Like, it's tough because you hate to see a team have to get like sweet chin music, in order for them to like figure out like, oh shoot, like, oh my God, like you get kicked in the mouth and all of a sudden you're losing a couple teeth, you're bleeding out.
You wake up again. Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. I got to block my face. It's just like, oh yeah, I'm leaving myself open. I'm susceptible to getting kicked in the face. And it's just like, okay, you got to feel the pain a little bit in order to like fight back. And I think as a fan, you hate to see that. I think all fans will love if their teams just blew out the opponent. Like, just blow them out every time, like leave no doubt. And so I can breathe easy. But like all these like games where you're, Saturday was fun. Like that's a fun win. But at the same time, you're just like, dang, man, if they could have took care of things in the 4th, 5th inning, like that would be great. But like what you are excited to see is that the pitching is keeping them in it, like keeping them within striking distance. And that's all you can ask for. And that's really all that they probably were looking for headed into this season, because they felt confident after you spend 35 plus million on Carlos Correa. And, you got Byron Buxton on $100 million deal. I hate to be bringing up their money and all that stuff. I'm not in their pockets, I promise. But, you got all these big time bats that you truly believe in. You just want the pitchers to just give them a chance. And that's exactly what they're doing. And now the hitting is taking advantage of the chances that the pitching is giving them, keeping them in the game. And it looks great. You just want to know, once again, is it sustainable?
And here's the thing, too, with the pitching, just as we wrap up. Honestly, Reg, this pitching staff has been quietly doing this all year. When they lost 6 in a row last week, it was the bats, man. I mean, they were losing games 3-1, 4-2. Like, now they got the bats rolling, but pitching has been their one thing that they've been able to lean on outside of maybe 3-4 weeks after the All-Star break. They've kind of been the most consistent part of this team, really. Twins taking on the Red Sox tonight, starting a 3-game series. And I think it's natural to say, well, it'd be nice to have a day off here now after that roller coaster series, but I think if you ask the players, they'd say, no, we want to get out there and play as soon as possible. We're feeling good and we want to ride that momentum. And when you win 3 in a row like that, you just start to believe like you can beat anyone, anywhere, anytime. Where you want to play. You want to play in the back alley, play a little stickball, you name it, we got it. We feel good. Now, you mentioned the Red Sox are no slouch. I will argue the Red Sox, not the Red Sox that they used to be. I'm used to remembering the Red Sox this last decade as dominant, right? Yankees, Red Sox, always one of the last 2 teams standing. They're not as dominant and scary as they used to be. So they're 62 and 66. You mentioned, yeah, they're no slouch, but they have their own weaknesses, not as red hot as they used to be. You know, when the Orioles jump you, all right, things aren't quite as good as they used to be. Dylan Bundy on the mound tonight versus Brayan Bello. Bello's 0 for 3 this year, 7.26 ERA in 22 innings. So hopefully Twins bats can jump out on him right away. Coming up, we're getting into our Gimme One segment, and Reggie's going to give me one Vikings player you could be sleeping on for a Pro Bowl season. But first, remember, when you're subscribed to Locked On Sports Minnesota, you're getting endless Vikings talk with local experts. Sam and Ron talk football every day on The Ron Johnson Show. Reggie Wilson gives you a sports anchor's perspective right here on Superior Sports Talk. And the Minnesota Football Party brings together the top Vikings podcasters in the city. Subscribe to the free Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast feed wherever you find your podcasts. Drop us a 5-star review or find our videos on the Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button and leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. All right. Time has come. One of my new favorite segments called Gimme One. I'm going to throw out a Viking topic to Reggie. He's going to give me his first response that comes to mind. Let's jump right into it. Here we go. Give me one guy that could make the Pro Bowl on the Vikings roster that people may be sleeping on for the Vikings this year in 2022. Who you got?
Dang. You know what? I don't think people are sleeping on him because the hype train has been going like really hard, but KJ Osborne. I definitely think that, yeah, I have been saying for a while, and specifically on this program, that the Vikings could have 3,000-yard receivers in JJ, Thielen, and Osborne. And if he does that, I don't see why he doesn't make the Pro Bowl next season. Another one that maybe is not as easy as Osborne. How about Hicks at the linebacker spot? Like, dude was just quietly productive last year, like almost so quiet that, the Cardinals let him walk, in favor of youth. But like, I think he and Kendricks together with Asamoah as well, like, are going to have a very, very busy season this year. And if he racks up 100+ tackles, maybe adds in a couple sacks, maybe an interception or 2, I can see him making the Pro Bowl. And he's a guy that, people expect him to just be a pro's pro and go out there and do his job. But I still think that he has some elite level play left in his game that could see him make the Pro Bowl next season.
No, I absolutely love that. 3 straight 100-plus tackle seasons, and you steal the guy in the free agent market for a 2-year, $8 million deal? What's going on right now?
Nice.
And how about the guy next to him? You mentioned him, Kendricks. I mean, he plays at a Pro Bowl type of level nearly every season. He's only made
Yep.
one Pro Bowl. I think he could maybe be unlocked here as well. And I think you're right. One of Jordan Hicks or Eric Kendricks could put together statistically a really great Pro Bowl type of season. Another guy, I mean, we know the name, but everybody's just kind of slowly writing him off, assuming he's getting too long in the tooth. Harrison Smith has made like 4 straight Pro Bowls. He's made 6 in his career. Am I just supposed to assume that his play's just going to fall off a cliff and all of a sudden he's just going to be an average starter? This guy's a Pro Bowler, man, and he's going to play at that Pro Bowl type of level as well. I'm not writing him off yet until I see it. Next one up. Give me one position you would watch closely on the waiver wire Tuesday to add help to the Vikings roster in depth. Is there one specific position that you're just sitting there looking, going, be nice to maybe add 1 or 2 more guys and just feel a little bit more comfortable with this position?
I think you can always look at the offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they've kind of been in the trenches with the guys that they like, and so you would think that maybe they wouldn't add someone else to the mix when they've kind of been playing the guys that they like all camp and all off season. But you know, you can never have too many good guys on the line. And I know if you're picking somebody up on the waiver wire, you're like, he's not necessarily going to be like starter for us. But, you know, injuries happen. And you want to be confident that if one of your guys go down, like the next man up can fill in well enough. You know, he's not necessarily going to be the same. Like there's going to be a drop off there, but you want to make sure the next guy fills in well enough. And I think if you can get someone who was a bubble guy on a roster and maybe they just had to let that person go in favor of another position, but they really like that person, maybe was going to try to sneak them onto the practice squad to hold that person. I think maybe you do that at the offensive line position. Another one that's just a sneaky thought. You know, I know this is gimme one. I keep saying like gimme two, but
we'll take what we can get, Reg. Bonus time.
Yeah, okay.
Give it to us.
All right, cool. So a bonus one I wouldn't be like surprised about, and maybe you are surprised that I would say something like this. Wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
Wide receiver. I think you can never have too many like impact skill position guys. And so, you know, if they're not necessarily settled on some of the guys that, you know, they have, maybe, you know, Smith-Marsette is not necessarily the guy that they want, you know, for sure at punt return. And there's a guy who's a little bit more dynamic at punt return. Maybe they add another receiver and just have Smith-Marsette just being, you know, one of the guys in the receiver room and have maybe a guy returning punts. That could be a interesting situation as well.
There's been so much talent to come into the NFL from the collegiate level at wide receiver specifically the last 2-3 seasons that teams are just forced to cut guys. Like, look at, we cut Albert Wilson the first wave of cuts, man. What does that say?
Yeah.
I mean, he's no slouch, man. He caught 2 touchdowns in the preseason game. And we cut him the first wave. He didn't even make it to this final wave of cuts. So there is so much talent at wide receiver floating around the NFL. And come Tuesday, tomorrow at 3 p.m., there will be a bevy of options, certainly to pick through, you know, the little Walmart $1 DVD bin. There's going to be plenty of wide receivers to sit there and sift through and find some serious talent for cheap. I like that one. And then as far as offensive line, I just got to say, there's such a drop-off from your starters to the backups that it is so crucial to have some good depth back there. Now, obviously, if these guys are getting cut, they're not Pro Bowlers, but still to find good depth and good options, because you're one injury away. You're one Darrisaw injury away or Brian O'Neill injury away from this protection for Kirk Cousins being very skeptical. So that's certainly a good one, too. I like that you mentioned that. All right, last one. Give me one. Save the best for last. We teased this one at the beginning of the show. You even mentioned it during our Vikings segment. People are hyping the JJ, Thielen, KJ combo as the 2.0 version, the next version of Moss, Carter, Reed. Give me a reason why this could actually happen and come to fruition. What needs to happen?
I just think this offense needs to get on the same page. You know, like Kirk Cousins just needs to get up to speed on all the different intricacies and nuances of this offense, because I think Kevin O'Connell wants to spread the ball around. Like he even talked about, passing it to receivers more passing it to running backs more out of the backfield. And when you look at a situation like that, you see a guy that wants to pass the ball around. You look at the offense that he came from. Stafford was slinging it all over the field. If Kirk Cousins has a 4,000, 4,500, passing yards season, you would think that, like I said, at least 1,000 each will go to one of those three guys. And so I could see it happening. It's just a matter of this offense getting in sync and getting going like people expect them to do. And it could happen. I could see that. I think Moss Carter Reed is very lofty. And I caution people to have those type of expectations, because those three guys are kind of like a one of one. You're talking about two Hall of
That's the
Famers.
peak, man. That's the top of the mountain. That's tough. That's tough. But
So
even if they come close,
watch it. But I will say, man, last year Adam Thielen was on a tear before he got injured.
Mm-hmm.
And Justin Jefferson could have gotten more looks in that offense. They unleashed him after, several weeks or whatever, made it more of an emphasis to get him the football, get him touches. But if they were going to him more often, you look at some of these third down plays that just didn't happen. A lot of these Vikings drives stalled. If you don't see that this year, that means they are moving the ball well and they are staying ahead of the chains. And if they are doing that, that means this offense is having a lot of production, which means these receivers are having a lot of production. And that means that we see an explosive offense this upcoming season.
Davante Adams has scored the most red zone touchdowns in the past 2 seasons, more than any other wideout in the NFL. Do you know who's number 2 on that list?
Is it JJ?
Adam Mankato Magic Thielen. Nobody scored more red zone touchdowns in the last 2 seasons outside of Davante Adams than Adam Thielen. You tell me this guy couldn't score 14, 15 touchdowns now in this offense? I'm telling you. And by the way, just had my fantasy football draft the other night. I got Kirk Cousins and KJ Osborne for like $3 total in my auction. That was a 14-man league. People are sleeping on KJ, and you can get Kirk for cheap too, man. It's not like, Reg, you and I know anything secret or insider info. We're just watching the same practices and joint practices and preseason as everybody else, man. I just can't believe people are sleeping so much on KJ Osborne and even Kirk Cousins for that matter. All right, that's a wrap today. Back here tomorrow, breaking down more Twins, Vikes, and plenty more. Remember, you got to like, rate, review, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Join us every day for another episode with your 30-minute breakdown of everything Minnesota sports. By the way, you can now find us streaming on your Roku device, so be sure to look out for our Locked On Sports Minnesota app there as well. Pretty cool. We're a podcast too, free and available, all platforms. Subscribe, drop us a 5-star review, and take us everywhere on the go. That's the legend, Reggie Wilson. Follow him on Twitter at Reggie Wilson TV and on KARE11. Not too late. You can still check him out at the Minnesota State Fair. I'm Luke Inman on Twitter at Luke_Spinman. Special thanks to our producer, Matt DeBritz. Tune in tomorrow to Superior Sports Talk, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota. For Reggie, I'm Luke. Until tomorrow, signing out.
Be blessed. Spread love today.